I'm here on the job site with Dale, who's a framing contractor.
Hey, good morning.
Dale traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance for all his business vehicles. We're here where he needs us most.
Yep, they sure are.
We make it easy for him to save on all his insurance needs, all in one place, with coverage that fits his business and bottom line. Oh, I shouldn't have looked down.
It's all right.
We're so far up here.
Look at me. Take a deep breath.
No, I'm good. So good.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
Yay Networks.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. Welcome to our third episode in our Dream Bold Travel and Adventure series. We have a really cool guest joining us today. We've got Lolly of Travel with Lolly. She's walking us through her travel planning timeline, which is incredibly detailed. It is a checklist that I'm going to be saving, using, but it's basically, it walks us through starting as far as a year out for big travel. What are all those things that we need to make sure that we do to plan our travel, but also prepare to be gone from our homes? And a lot of those things that I think many of us in that 24 or 48 hour window right before we're leaving on to go on a trip, we feel so frazzled. We feel, just like there's no way we can cram it all in. This travel timeline will prevent that from happening. So for those of y'all who aren't aware, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what this Dream Bold Travel and Adventure series is. So it's based on a book called The Dream Manager by Matthew Kelly. The overarching idea is that our successes, our focus on our work life doesn't have to be completely exclusive of our own dreams and goals. And these dreams may be professional, they may be personal. And the Dream Bold initiative is something that we started with the Ochsner Health and Wellness Solutions division with our VP, Deidre Diaz, giving us the time, giving us the resource to slow down, to take a look inside, to see what really matters to us. So we launched the Dream Bold initiative. There's a series of workshops throughout the year based on different key areas of focus that we've learned that are a lot that people have let us know are their big dreams. And so far, many have fallen into four categories: financial well-being, mental well-being. Those two topics were covered earlier in the year as part of our Ochsner Health and Wellness Solutions. And then at the end of the year, we'll have a physical well-being. And this is the Adventure and Travel series. And so I'm leading this with Scott Wonke. And again, I'm a registered dietitian. Scott is a physical therapist. We both have a lot of travel experience and passion. So we've brought together this panel of experts really over this 12-week series to share with y'all. Our plan is that each of these can stand alone, but they do build upon one another. So if you can listen to them kind of in the order, starting at the beginning, even better. But if you're just hearing one at a time, one kind of on its own, that's also okay as well. The last thing I'll let y'all know is this is recorded live by Zoom. So we have through Ochsner, y'all here, we'll be like referring to the Zoom chat or questions that are coming through. That's because this interview with Lolly and with all of our travel series is live at 12 o'clock Mondays, noon Mondays by Zoom live. However, we're also taping it, recording it at the exact same time to air as this podcast. So if y'all hear both things happening, that's why. So with that, let's go ahead and join the Zoom. Welcome to those of y'all. We've got audience happening two ways. We have Zoom happening live, and we also have the podcast that is being recorded that'll be available later this week. So thank you to everybody for joining us. This is actually the third in our series of Dream Bold Travel and Adventure. And I'm Molly Kimball. I'm hope that y'all have been tuned in to the first two. You've seen myself. You've also seen Scott Wonke with me. He is our physical therapist. He is actually on vacation this week. So next week, he and I are doing sort of a recap because it'll be our fourth. We will have had 3 guest-filled segments. And so next week, Scott and I are going to kind of do a touch point of, okay, what have we learned so far? Where are we? What's our pulse check for all of us? And at that point, I'm sure Scott will have some adventure stories of his own of traveling with his toddler. I could be wrong, but I believe it might be just Scott and his son Jax taking a trip together. So I'm sure that there's going to be a lot there. So throughout this whole 12 weeks, y'all know that we're sharing about ourselves, our passion for travel, why you have a nutritionist and a physical therapist who are leading your Dream Bold travel series. And we have this amazing lineup of experts. I'll introduce you to Lolly in just a bit, who y'all see here. But we've got 12 weeks that are information packed. If you're not familiar with the Dream Bold concept, I think that y'all are, but if you aren't, it is based on the concept of the Dream Manager, the book by Matthew Kelly. We are fortunate enough that our Ochsner leadership, Deidre Diaz with our Ochsner Health and Wellness Solutions, really believes in this as something that we can all not just read as an interesting book, but truly incorporate it into our lives. And so she has supported and encouraged the founding of this Dream Bold committee. So throughout the year, there's different areas that we focus on. So earlier we had finance at the first part of the year. We had mental well-being. We have our adventure travel. And then towards the end of the year, we'll also have our physical well-being and sort of the health or physical goals that people are aiming and striving toward. So with that, I'm going to switch my pages and introduce y'all to Lolly. As Scott and I were researching, and we were like, we want to find a travel timeline and something that can really be a roadmap to people, especially if there's that trip you're taking that might feel really overwhelming, that you haven't you're not sure exactly where to start, or it seems like you've never done something this big before, or even your normal travel, but you feel like you're kind of rushed and doing it all at the last minute. So as we were searching, I found this incredible resource for us, for y'all, and that is in Lolly with Travel with Lolly. So we'll be posting the links throughout, but Lolly has had multiple facets of her life, of her career. You know, she started out in banking. And Lolly, I actually just realized I don't have your bio in front of me, so I'm going off of memory. So if I say anything wrong, you can correct. But she worked in the banking industry for years, and she, you know, worked in a very, very detailed, kind of meticulous type of a position. She left the working field for a bit. She had kids. She had 3 children. Then she was like, I want to do something that is completely different and something that is helping people every day. So she went into education. And after years of working in education and in that field, she retired. She thought she was going to retire, but then actually that was when she'd been traveling her entire life. And she grew up, is it Germany?
Yes.
So she grew up in Germany and had a lot of travel as a child, had a lot of travel as an adult. And then that travel got bigger and more robust and things that required more planning. And so as y'all will hear, while she thought, I'm going to step into retirement, she's like, I'm not going to just do nothing. What am I going to do? And the obvious thing for her was take this experience, take her passion, and sort of like when she became a teacher and was like, I want to do something that's going to help people. Her website, her blog, her information that she's sharing and inspiring us with serves to help us as well. So with that, welcome, Lolly.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Oh, we've been all really looking forward to this, and Scott's really sad that he has to miss it. So, looking at the different, I'm actually going to shift our gears to I'm actually going to have to just stop for a second, let you share about yourself, because I realized all the notes that I needed are not just with your bio, it's the other notes. I have 2 complete sets of notes here, y'all, and I thought I had myself covered. So Lolly, if you can fill in a little bit on your background and kind of what brought you to where you are and kind of what your whole website and passion and platform is about, and that'll get me time to get to our questions.
Absolutely. And again, nice to be here. You kind of covered everything really well. I did go into education, which I absolutely loved. And when I decided that I was going to be retiring, I decided just to blend my passion for travel with education. So instead of actually working with little kids now I have, adults who love to travel. So my whole purpose is just to share information about destinations and fun things to do at places. And I also profile certain properties that are unique. that I think people might be interested in. And of course, travel tips. So it's just really, my website is just to help other travelers.
And as you'll hear with Lolly, you can be as specific as you want in your planning, or you can be as loose as you want. And she'll kind of walk through that. And Lolly is your nickname. Lolly is not your given name.
Right.
And it's part of a bigger nickname.
Yes, it is. It is my grandma name. I have 2 grandkids, and so I didn't want to be grandma or nana or anything like that. So my daughter actually thought of this. So I'm Lolly, and my husband is Pop. It's Lolly Pop. It's a little corny, but it's been working.
It's
so
cute. And so you'll also see the Lollipop insignia on her website. Do you go by Lolly with everybody now?
Yeah, pretty much.
And your given name is Lynn, correct? So at least it's not the same, but it kind of rolls off the tongue a little bit the same. And so this is something that it's not something that, I guess for our listeners, you don't take this lightly. You take this is such a focus. You are meticulous. I would say probably your family and friends might say you would be a perfectionist. I think.
I am, yes. I am very detail oriented. I'm very anal about things. I like to really look at the big picture, but then I want to drill down to the details. So yes.
So point being to our audience, you're in good hands with Lolly as you're listening to this. So before we get into the specific, and we'll be popping up into the chat and I'll post in the episode notes some of the specifics, but Cam, we don't want to put those up just yet. We actually want to put some of the main websites up towards the end because we really want to make sure that people are really listening to what Lolly says about it. These websites will be there at the end as a resource, but I'd rather y'all hear Lolly's take on it and use this time for any questions and follow up. But before we get into that, if you can talk with us about your travel influences. I know that you've had a lot of travel. You've had small travel, big travel, but what have been some of the things that have impacted you the most that you feel that have changed you as a person when you got back? They were sort of still sticking with you in your head in some way.
Well, you're absolutely right. So I was born in Europe, and then my family, we lived in Europe and Asia for 12 years before coming back and settling in the States. I went on a high school trip to Germany and England, Poland, and Russia, and then extensive travel as an adult. And it's just, the takeaway is just all these memorable experiences, and most of them have to do with the people we meet along the way, whether we're traveling domestically or internationally. And my husband and I both have such an interest in travel and history and learning about culture. And, wherever you are, some places, here in the United States and, of course, abroad, the history of a place, wherever it is, impacts us, so history in Europe, Asia, wherever, it impacts the United States as well. So we're just very interested in learning that and how a place came to be. Of course, we also enjoy the culture and the food. But really my biggest takeaways are really the interactions I have with other people, learning about their dreams, their lives, how they live, that type of thing. And, we're all the same, but we are all different. And it's just fun to explore that part of it.
Do you have a lot of people that you've met on your travels that you stay in touch with?
Some. But even without that, I mean, the impact and the memories are there with a lot of people. We met a cabbie right outside the Vatican who we got to talking, there was a little bit of a language barrier, but he went into his glove box and he showed us relatives he had in the United States that are maybe 50 miles away from us.
Wow,
I mean, it's like a small world, so travel has been very enriching.
And I think wherever we are, again, if it's small travel, if it's big travel, the contacts and the conversations and the connections that we make, for me, that's it too. And from some of our travel, we do have people that we've stayed in touch with, and we may send them an update, or there's something that we think, oh, Antonio would love to hear that or see that or whatever it might be that was part of that thing that we connected about. we won't talk about this like in the timeline, but as you're saying that or kind of recounting the stories, do you keep a journal, a travel journal?
I do. Yes. It used to be something that I would, it was a spiral bound thing that my husband and I would both write in, every day we would journal. And I also do it online now,
Right.
Hold on to those memories.
Right. And that's something that my husband and I, we don't do it on every trip, but I'll tell you on the trips that we have done it, we refer back to it from time to time, or we may say, oh, this is the same time of the year that we were at such and such place, and we'll pull it out and look at it. Because those little the stories they're small stories, but they're impactful, like you said about the cab driver, these other things, it's hard to remember them all. And there's so much that can happen in a day. And so I would encourage that. I mean, I think it's a great idea to even journal in our normal lives. I find that a challenge. I have the intent. I have the book right there. I don't always do it. Even when you travel, it can be a challenge to like make the time, even though you would think that you would have more time. But even if you just put a few of the key words, that's enough to prompt. It doesn't have to be perfect, but a few of those key words that can kind of help remind you of what that is. Because to me, it's the stories about the people that are, it's also what's really inspiring and helping us to understand how they live so differently from us, and that maybe how we're doing what we're doing day in, day out in our life, just because that's how we've always done it. Maybe there's other ways to do it or other ways to think about it.
Yes. And, you're absolutely right. Journaling is so important. And another thing that I do when we get back is I create photo books. So there's a photo book of just about every trip. And then I go back to my journaling, and then I pull things out that I want to make sure that we never forget, like funny things, frustrating things, and little blurbs about the people we've met. So that's been a great keepsake. It's the photo books sit on our shelf, and we pull them out every so often and reminisce. And yeah, it's a great way to hold on to memories too.
Carving out the time to do that is a big one. So I would say on that, like if it's something that you've had these pictures that are sitting there and you haven't done anything with them to organize it, and I'm saying this message to myself as well, like don't let that paralysis of perfection get in the way. It doesn't have to be perfect. Better not to be perfect, but still have them to where you can see them visibly, than to just have them stored in your phone or wherever it is that like you're not even enjoying them, or like you're scrolling through thousands of things to get there. So with that, talking about the timeline, this is... everyone who's watching or listening in the podcast, if you're watching, we'll enter this into the chat in a bit so that you'll have the timeline. We'll put it towards the end. And those listening on the podcast, you'll see it in the episode notes. This is essentially a travel timeline that takes it back starting at 6 to 12 months out. And so Lolly has really walk through all these different steps that we would need to do. Again, if it's small travel or big travel. And I would also say, Lolly, as you're traveling now, it's got to be a little bit different since you have the website, since you have the blog, and as we're looking at the timeline, and y'all will start to hear as Lolly's talking through it, if someone's traveling with you or you're putting a trip together, there's got to feel like there's more pressure on you. Like it's got to be good. Like if Lolly's planning it,
it's got to be good. Right? Well, and you know what? We have taken a couple of trips with other couples. So, that has been an interesting experience as well, just blending everybody's interests together and finding experiences that we'll all enjoy and that type of thing. But yeah, it's just like, better be good.
Better be good. When you travel with other couples, just curious, I don't really like to use the word bossy because I think that bossy is not always, I think, sometimes women do things and it's bossy and a guy does it and it's considered just normal. But so I don't really like the word bossy, but I'm going to use it. Did you feel like you had to like almost be maybe a little like more gentle in your approach because you didn't want to come across as like taking total control of it? Like did you have to remind yourself to ask, what do they want, or try to get crowd feedback?
Yeah, I never went into it like I was planning the whole thing. We would sit down and, chat about what our interests were. We had each done a little research, and we wanted a blend of experiences, not just all, history, not all, that type of thing. So it was just really all coming together with ideas and then blending them together. So no, I'm not going to take that credit, for doing the whole thing. but it was really a collaborative effort in both instances.
I think for those of us tuning in, like if we're listening to this and we're watching this, we clearly have a drive and a passion for travel, and we have an interest in planning that travel, or why are we listening to the planning timeline with Lolly? So I think that's like something that's just really important to think about, because talking about travel and the way people plan travel can also be really different. I think about like when my husband and I were planning a trip that was going to be an extended trip, at first I'm very much like, there's whatever the idea is, let's start doing it. Let's start working toward it. Brad is more, he wants to talk through it and toss around ideas and marinate on this. And then he likes to have the ideas come up, talk through them. And I'm like, okay, let's just do it. So I had to realize at that point, he threw out a few ideas of something he thought. And I was like, well, yeah, let's do it. Let's do this and then this. And he's like looking at me. He's like, I'm not ready to start planning or booking anything. I'm still just like throwing things out there. And so that for me, I had to tell myself like, okay, back off. It wasn't impending. It wasn't immediate. Like there was no rush, but in order to make it enjoyable for both of us, it needed to work with ways that are both of our communication styles. So I think that's important to anyone listening of, you may be the big planner, but if that other person isn't, or the other person maybe is more hesitant, or maybe just wants to throw more ideas out, realizing that we all communicate about travel differently and we all have different ideas of what's going to be enjoyable. One more thing I think I would say is like, I think about a specific couple, I won't say their names, but the guy is a big planner and he likes to have he's the one, if they're doing a small trip, like even taking the kids to the theme park, he even has lined up when they're going to get in the queue for each ride. He has it down, planned that much. And especially if they're taking a big trip like overseas, he has everything is back to back, and it drives the wife nuts because she really wants it to be a little looser. And so they have very different travel ideas. And so I think that's another thing that I would encourage, like trying to find something that meets in the middle.
Exactly.
So with that, we'll start with the travel timeline. So now 6 to 12 months out, when we look at in the categories, so Lolly has this 4 action steps, basically, whether it's domestic travel, and I say small trips or big trips. A lot of times that small travel might be within the U.S. It might be really close to home or a little further from home. Big trips, I sort of mean international when I say big trips. But the 6 to 12 months in advance, that could be for both, right? Like you might want to start planning this far in advance if it's domestic, but especially if it would be international.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think you can start planning too early. Get your ideas together, figure out where you want to go, think about where your dreams are, what you want to see, what you want to experience. And then think about how long you have to take that trip. And then, of course, figure in the budget and go from there. But I don't think you can plan too early, especially in today's climate, the way some things are. There's some uncertainty surrounding availability of, flights, of experiences, museums, that type of thing. So as soon as you figure out what you want to do and where you want to go, I'd say start planning and taking the next steps.
And as we've said before on this podcast series, Scott and I are highly aware that this is quite possibly the worst time to launch a travel series because restrictions are tightening up. Things are starting to get just more snug as far as what we're able to do. And there's a lot of question marks again. So sort of what Lolly just said, using this time to think about what are these dreams and planning it. And even if being the as she said, it's not too far to plan in advance because part of it, a lot of the pleasure of traveling is planning it and starting to immerse yourself in that world. And when you do feel like there's just all this stuff around us that feels very negative, every time we're turning on the news or the latest update, it's easy to feel really defeated. And so as we start to plan, well, like one day, what does that travel look like? So this might not be anytime soon. It might be a year from now or longer, and that's okay. So that 6 to 12 months in advance, we first would start thinking big, so your destination, where? And
right.
This is whether it's yourself or others starting to kind of have that brainstorm, I guess, of the conversation of dreams.
Exactly. I mean, I think this is the prime time to position yourself for travel when it does things do loosen up and things become safer everywhere. One place that I start when my husband and I, we always have a few ideas in our head of trips that we want to take in the future, right? It's just a little mental list that we've got. And then when we start getting serious about it, like, why don't we do it, next spring or whatever, then I really start to do a lot of research and really just get a little bit more like meat on the bones of our ideas, so to speak. I do use online research, of course, but then I also go to our public library and I get out guidebooks from places that we are thinking visiting. And I get a variety of guidebooks, not all from the same publisher. And I kind of cross-reference and then add to our list. And then we have conversations about, oh yeah, that would be really interesting, or that kind of a thing. And then we're just building our ideas and figuring out, what we really want to do.
So that big picture, higher level, 6 to 12 months out, where to, how much time do you have? So where are you going to go? How much time are you going to have? And that's also, you might, will need to factor in work or what these things look like. There might be certain windows of time that are best for you to take this time off from work. And there might be a limited window of time that you have, number of days to take off. So where do you want to visit the most? How much time do you have? What's your budget? So, 6 to 12 months out, big picture stuff. And also I'll point out on your travel timeline, you have number 2, you have stay safe, and you have really great links to a coronavirus resource website. It is through Johns Hopkins that has the latest updates about the COVID outbreak, and then also an interactive map that's showing information about COVID. So you have number 1, Lolly has the where to, when, what's your budget. Number 2, staying safe. So I don't think we need to say more about that, but just know that in here there's a lot of really great links and specific links that Lolly has for this. Also, things about the U.S. Department of State about travel alerts, advisory. So literally safety she has is that number 2. And then doing your research. So you talked about the library. A lot of websites will have those online, but there's a lot to be said of the tangible in person, to where you can spread them all out in front of you. And like you said, kind of cross-reference, what are some of the top recommendations?
Right. And I do find when I go on those websites, the same ones that have the guidebooks that you can purchase, there's a lot more detail in the guidebooks, the travel books, than there are online. I mean, you go online and you can get, again, high-level information about a place that you're going to be visiting and the key things to see and do. But when you get down to, you actually have the physical book in front of you, there's more information.
That's true. I guess it's everything digitally is fast. Even this podcast, our podcast producers will say, really 20, 30 minutes is ideal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way we could have, 30 minutes. And so we just do what feels right to get the information across. But digitally, everything's fast. I think with the idea that people aren't going to just scroll through pages and pages. So that's a really great point of, even if you think you're doing your research by these online forums, really those guidebooks, I mean, think about like a book versus an article on a website. You didn't get it all from the article on the website. So you have some of the ones you have like Photos, Frommer's, Lonely Planet, the different travel blogs. You also talk about online sites like TripAdvisor and Yelp to see people's reviews.
Exactly, because say I'm going to go to, wherever I'm going to go, then I will go on TripAdvisor and Yelp. And a lot of times I discover even more information. The reviewers have recently been there, so it's up to date information. And actually, we were in Greece about 2 years ago. And when I got to the point of looking online at, the TripAdvisor and Yelp, I thought, oh my gosh, this sounds like so much fun. And I found a cooking school, just a one-day cooking school that my friends and I, we had a blast at. We would not have found that had it not been for TripAdvisor. Likewise, we went on this wine and olive safari. This was down in Crete in southern Greece, and that was one of the best experiences we had. Yeah. So, there's just so many resources, and there are benefits to each one of them.
And they can help you troubleshoot. So we use TripAdvisor a lot to help decide, is something worth it or not? Is there, what are the reviews? Is it rated high? Is this worth our time to do? And we went to Costa Rica, which, by the way, for everyone here in New Orleans or the New Orleans area, Southwest has a direct flight from Houston to Costa Rica, which can make it really time efficient. It's like a 2-hour flight from Houston, y'all, to Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is a very affordable place to stay. So you may be like, wow, that seems like so far off or too fancy or so high end. But and they have rainforest, it's inland. They have the coast, which is, so if you want beach, if you want surfing, if you want rainforest, hiking, and it's a very easy flight, a very manageable. So side note on that, but we're going there with some friends, and it was a couple, and kind of talking about different people who travel differently, and they were concerned about renting a car, and the concern was that the roads, they had heard, weren't really good, and did we want to rent a car or did we want to arrange for transportation? And so TripAdvisor gave us the answer. TripAdvisor said a lot of people say the roads are too bad and you don't get a rental car. But here's our experience. And sometimes they'll post pictures of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of detail that you can almost immerse as if you're there. And so then we're like, well, wow, this really isn't that bad. We could get a car. It was a whole lot cheaper to do a rental car than do some other form of transportation. But places, sites like the comments and a TripAdvisor type site can really give us ideas of new things that maybe we're not seeing in the guidebooks. And it also can help us maybe sidestep some errors that they've made, if there's things that, like, we've also used that for hiking, those are huge reviews. You go, man, if you're at a place and there's just thousands of options, or hiking trails is only one, whatever it is that you're thinking of doing, and you don't even know how to narrow these options down, going to TripAdvisor can be really good. Restaurants as well, because they rank them and they'll categorize them. So if you wanted whatever you're looking for, there's going to be a category and a ranking of it on a place like TripAdvisor. So doing your research, this is all still 6-12 months out, booking your lodging. And as Lolly says, of course, not too early to book it, but definitely check the cancellation policies.
Yes, exactly. And I put an alert on my phone, a notification on my phone, so that I am reminded when that cancellation date is approaching, maybe a few days prior to that. Just to, check in again, make sure that everything is on target and we are, there's no reason to cancel, that type of thing. So it's just like a little peace of mind for me.
And sometimes it helps to have those two options because you don't know which is going to work. We're actually looking at, hopefully we'll be able to take a trip right around Labor Day. And we're not sure which day we'd be flying out. Well, the flights are refundable. So my husband, I said, are we flying out Sunday or Tuesday? Well, we've got flights for both. And I'm like, okay. Well, because they were refundable. So then just depending on what lands with his work of which day we would go. Okay. And just like you said, he's got that reminder so we don't end up being responsible for two flights. So booking those planes, ferries, transportation, cars, whatever it is. I would say too, on the rental car, don't be afraid of getting a rental car in most areas. Now, that's something that I would say, do a TripAdvisor search. It'll, of course, depend on where you're going. But a lot of times, a rental car might seem scary. Like, I don't know that area. I don't know the lay of the land. I'm afraid about either the communication or whatever it would be. But what I find is in a lot of places, assuming you're comfortable, if it's driving on the left side of the road, that might be something that you're not. I don't think I would be comfortable with that so much, but at least not yet. But looking into it and search on those, because something like as simple as having a car, and depending on price and stuff like that, it can help save money on your transportation, but it can really help open up what your experiences are and what you see, what you're able to see. So I think a lot of times we don't think about rental cars. We think, oh, I'll just Uber or taxi or rely on whatever transportation, but that can really open up your options and make it possible to get just a wider range of like more intimate experiences into the space that you're visiting.
I totally agree. We always get a rental car wherever we are. And going back to TripAdvisor, that helped us with the whole rental car situation in Greece, because we had heard horror stories kind of traveling on the island roads, and then realized that it wasn't as bad as we thought. Like, for example, when we were in Crete, we learned online before we went there that when you're driving and you see somebody approaching from the back, you look in your rearview mirror and there's somebody approaching, you get over on the shoulder and let them pass you on the road, which was great. I mean, knowing that, if we hadn't known that, then it might have been a little bit trickier. But I agree. We've had so much more flexibility when we rent a car. And we can just stop when we want to. If we see something like an amazing view or a restaurant we want to stop at, we have the flexibility to do that. So yeah, that's the way we like to travel, is to have our own transportation.
We had a note in the chat that someone said driving on the other side of the car and the other side of the road can be fun. And I think it would be, but I think I would want to practice on like a very safe, quiet side street first. And I don't know that I would want to get into any busy spaces, at least not responsible for anybody else's life. I'll be in the backseat for that one or along for the ride. But yes, I think like that's, again, sometimes if we aren't so sure, it's easy to say, well, I won't do that. I'll turn to someone who knows where they're going. And now with the different GPS applications and stuff that we can have on our phone, applications. I don't know why I said the whole word applications instead of apps, but all the different types of navigation, it makes it so much easier now. Like it's no longer the days of like our parents or grandparents where the map is all over the place and it's wrinkled and everyone's frustrated and sweating because you don't know where you're going. That can really make it a lot easier. On planning the experiences, you talk about, you mentioned the TripAdvisor and things like that to see one that we've also, I didn't know about it until just maybe a year or two ago. So Airbnb, where of course you can decide, do you want to do a hotel or do you want to do an Airbnb style? But Airbnb has Airbnb experiences. And that I thought was really interesting. And it's like individuals will post their services on there. And so like cooking classes, there's a heck of a lot of people who will take your picture for Instagram pictures in whatever location you're going to go to. But there's still other people who have maybe whatever their specialty is that can kind of show you the local side of things.
You're absolutely right. And we're planning a trip. Actually, we're going to be leaving very soon. And we're actually going to Canada. It was a trip that we had planned for April of 2020. And of course, COVID happened and we didn't think we were going to be able to do it. And we just, this spring, we just decided, well, let's just pick a time later this year that that we'll go. So we picked a date in August and lo and behold, the border is open as of today. So we're going to go on that trip, but we are using tours by locals. So that's another great thing. It's somebody who lives in this place that we're going to be visiting, and she tailors she has a tour that she normally does, but she'll just tailor it to whatever you want. So that's kind of fun too. I'm looking forward to that.
Is that specifically there? You just refer to it as Tours by Locals, or is that a website or a resource?
Website. Yeah,
okay.
That's a website.
So toursbylocals.com. Okay.
Yeah. And there are lots of places like that you can find people who, enjoy meeting other people and showing them around.
And so on Lolly's travel timeline, we're still in the 6 to 12 months out. You'll see that she has a great example for how she organizes all the content that she gets. So, you're getting all this information and you're seeing all these things, and she has a really cool spreadsheet that she does. And you might be like, oh my God, I hate Excel. But when you see this, it's very approachable. And she does it well, for hers, it's a column of date, activity, the location, and then the sightseeing options. And she'll build in time that might be downtime or just a low-key day. So you'll see that example on her travel timeline. And that has the 3 W's that you refer to: the when, the where, and the what. And so moving into, actually, I think the last thing in the 6 to 12 months, and this is key, is updating any travel documents. So especially if you're going out of the country.
Right. And you know what, if I could just go back to that spreadsheet that I do.
Sure.
One really important thing that has become even more important is, I have the dates running down one side of the spreadsheet, but then I've started just to also put whatever that day is. If it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. And that has really helped on more recent trips, because with the pandemic, not everything is as open as it used to be. So, for example, a museum or an experience was open 6 days a week before. It may only be open 3 or 4 days a week, typically over a weekend. So if we're going to be somewhere on a Monday, hey, we may not be able to see what we wanted to see. So that really helps with planning too, just knowing what day of the week.
Yeah, great point. That's a really great point, because that's happened, and that's incredibly disappointing when you miss out on something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Travel documents, you have, kind of what to look for as far as updating, either getting a passport if you don't have a passport. And travel documents, I would say, are more for if you're traveling internationally. If you're traveling domestically, really you need your driver's license and you're good to go for the most part. But your state's real ID, passport, either having it or make sure that it's current.
Right. And the real ID, it was supposed to go into effect already, but it's now been pushed to May of 2020. Okay. So if you're in need of renewing your license, then now's the time to add the real ID, and then that allows you to fly domestically without anything else. The real ID will be your ID. If you don't have a real ID come May of 2023, then you're going to have to travel with your passport.
And this is called a real ID, REAL. Like you're not just calling it a real ID. That's the name of it.
Exactly.
Yes. One thing on the passport that we didn't know is that passport also needs to be good for at least, as you say in your timeline, at least 6 months after you expect to return from your trip. And you may be like, well, why? Like, we didn't know this. And we had a trip, years back, we had a trip that was scheduled to a French territory. It wasn't to France, but it was a French-owned territory. And we were we had gotten ourselves, on the first leg of our flight, had gotten ourselves to Los Angeles, and we were boarding the plane for this international flight. And we got turned back at the check-in, at the counter, because my husband's passport was current. We had checked, obviously. We were about to leave. We had checked our passports. They were current. But it needed, the rule in France or any French territory is that it had to be valid for at least 3 months after our return date. So let's say we were flying out January 1, we were going to be back in 10 days or something like that. His passport was valid till, let's say, the end of February. But in this case, it had to be valid until close to April for this reason. So we had to stay in LA, and that was on a Saturday. So Sunday, everything's closed. We had to wait for the passport offices to open Monday. And then, so we lost 3 days of what was a trip that we were really excited about. So definitely check that. So even if you think my passport's current, if it's been a while, take a look, and just for that safety net, at least 6 months after you expect to return from that trip. Very good tip. So now we're getting a little closer, 3 to 6 months. These are things that are less big picture ideas and a little bit more specific. So downloading travel apps is one of the first things you have, or applications.
Right. And so obviously if you're flying somewhere, you would want to download the airline app, because that will keep you up to date on any kind of delays, that type of thing. It alerts you when the plane is boarding. So if you're not right at the gate, you know that you got to get over there, that type of thing. And then there are a variety of other ones. If you're traveling internationally, Google Translate is an awesome app. I've used it when I wanted to communicate with somebody in Sweden, and I wasn't sure exactly. It was not a common phrase that I was trying to communicate. And so I could just type it in or talk to my phone, and it would translate for me. Likewise, we were in a little town in Germany a couple years ago, and, we were in Bavaria, that's beer and pretzels and mustard and that type of thing. So little shop that sold only mustard. And I'm like, we have to get some of this. Went in, and the person there didn't speak English. And so I just used my phone and I held it up to the product that I thought I wanted. And it told me, it translated it right there. So I knew if that was going to be spicy mustard, for example, or not, type of thing. So it's really helped a lot. And it also helps when you're somewhere and you see a sign on the side of the road and you're driving, you can just go ahead and take a picture. So it's a great benefit for international travel.
I agree. I think,
and you can also practice your phrases.
Yes.
Like you can beforehand. So you look a little bit intelligent when you're, meeting somebody in another place.
It'll say it out loud to you, right? The phrase. Yeah. So Google Translate by far is, I think, like one of the most useful apps. And I use it here in the US. If I happen to be with someone who doesn't speak good English and they're trying to communicate something, and for whatever reason, I actually within the past 10 days have pulled out my Google Translate to communicate with someone who I didn't speak their language. They didn't speak really much English. And so it was a very effective way to get the point across, So
with students too,
Yes.
I was teaching because we had students who were new to the country, and that was it's very, very helpful.
Yes. So point being, download Google Translate today. Don't wait till you're traveling, because so to reiterate what Lolly said, everyone on here and everyone listening may already be familiar with Google Translate. I'm telling you stuff you already know, but just to reiterate, if you don't know, it'll let you pick whatever language you want to translate it to. So you can type it in English, and then you can pick whatever language you want them to translate it into. Or the reverse. If you see something you're not sure what it is in that language, you can put that in and it'll translate it to English. As Lolly was saying, the camera translates. So that street sign or that menu or whatever it is, you can hold it up and it'll translate it for you. Sometimes it's a little off, like it's very literal in the interpretation, which is also really entertaining at times. But for the most part, it's spot on. So Google Translate is fantastic. The airlines app, like you said, finding a GPS that you are comfortable using, some sort of a navigation app that you're comfortable using. And there's a way, Lolly, I don't want to put you on the spot. And if you don't know it, I'll find it out and I'll share it in our later podcast. There's a way to figure out, like, basically, if you're looking to what your destination is going to be and you know that you're going to be disconnected from Wi-Fi, there's a way to expand your location so that your maps will continue to navigate you there, even if you're not connected to Wi-Fi. Are you familiar with this?
I have not used that. One thing that we are going to be using in our travels in the next couple of weeks is an app that you can download, and it actually narrates. Like, for example, we're going to be visiting the Canadian Rockies, and I've already downloaded it, and it is going to, even if we're offline, which we will be, it's going to be kind of tricky out there in the mountains. It is still going to narrate where we are just based on our GPS location.
And what's that one called?
I'm not sure how you pronounce this, but it looks like gypsy, right?
Okay.
Gypsy. But when you look at it, it's, capital G, lowercase y. It doesn't really matter, but the GPS is in there.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a cute play on the words too, gypsy for that. Yeah.
And we have I'm not sure if this trip is going to happen, but we have a trip planned to Utah later this fall. And again, I've downloaded that, the gypsy for that as well. So each national park, they've got commentary. So, as you're walking, hiking, riding through the park, it gives you a lot of information.
Yeah, that's very cool. So gypsy, and you can download it. So if you're offline, you can still access it. And so in that 3 to 6 months out, what travel apps, familiarize yourself with them. And just for fun, you can start to use some of them in real time here, like Google Translate or even that Gypsy app. There might be something like in your normal life that you're like, oh, there's something you could do here to play around with it. Your camera, you have that in here. Like, are you going to use your iPhone camera or smartphone camera, or do you want to get a quote real camera? If so, give yourself time to be familiar with it, learn it so that you don't have this fancy camera that you don't know how to use. But figure out what your camera option is, your travel gear. And in here, for the sake of time, Lolly, I'll kind of just sum up just a little bit on some of these for our listeners. But, Lolly has in here too, when you're traveling internationally, that travel gear is going to include, of course, like backpacks and totes, but also the converters. She has that in here so that the outlets that you would plug any electronics into. So if it is your smartphone or that, whatever it is, she's got tips of taking along small charging stations and all these things that you can still use no matter what the electricity, what the outlets are like, the chargers are like. And then finally in this 3 to 6 months, you have scheduled pet sitting. And pet sitting seems a little far out to schedule, but do we want to give people peace of mind at least 3 to 6 months out that they've got this covered?
Yeah. Now, we used to use the service. Unfortunately, we have lost our loved four-legged friends, family members, I should say. But we used a service where somebody, came in several times a day, did walks and, that kind of a thing. But it booked up early, and if the people are not available, they're not available type of thing. I mean, if you take your pet to a kennel, that's probably something different. But again, I don't think you can act too early on any of this type of thing. And like you say, it's peace of mind knowing that you got all your little ducks in a row, and it takes some of the stress off of the whole planning.
And then again, we're going to post this, the travel timeline with Travel by Lally, so that y'all will have everything we're saying. But we didn't want to put it ahead now because we didn't want y'all to read through. But so that 6 to 12 months, it's big picture stuff. That 3 to 6 months in advance. Okay, now your apps that you're going to use, your travel apps, your camera, what's your travel gear? What are things specifically maybe to that destination that you need to have? The pet sitting, like you said, and starting to think these big things that you might be bringing on your trip. It could be something very specific to that. If it's out of the norm, start to check those TSA requirements. Are you able to bring that? Now, when you get up to 3 months, this is where things start to get real. It's happening. Like, you're going to be doing it. And one tip that you have in here, you have about currency exchange. And so if a lot of people feel more comfortable with doing that currency exchange in the U.S., they don't want to land in that country without having cash to that country. So that's definitely one. Then right after that, you have a valuable tip of notifying your banks.
Absolutely. That is so important. I mean, you want your credit card companies, debit card, your banks to know that you're going to be traveling. And in some cases, the credit card company may not require that. The banks normally do. Now, for example, for this upcoming trip, I have called the credit card company and the credit card that we're going to be using. And they said, we don't need to know the exact dates or where you're going to be. The bank, on the other hand, said, yes, we need to know. And we did get burned one time. This was maybe 5-6 years ago. And we forgot to notify our bank. And we were in Europe and we couldn't get any money out of the ATM, which was dreadful. So, and another little tip is, if you are traveling internationally or even nationally, have the phone number, the contact number for the bank, like that 800 number on the back of your card, just in case. I mean, in case you lose, your credit card, you need to notify the bank. But if you don't have your credit card, you don't have that 800 number to report it that way. So that might just be something, somebody you add to your contacts in your phone, just in case.
And then getting your phone ready for travel. So you can have your phone set up as a hotspot, but also working with your provider to see what type of service do you want to add. And you can add specific levels of service just for that time you're gone. So maybe you pay a premium, but it allows for international calls to either be free or a much lower rate than if you're going to make that international charge without that.
Exactly. That's key.
And that would vary, I guess, with different providers, but that's something that you don't want to get over there and then need to make a phone call. And it's, hundreds of dollars later, you've solved an issue, So expanding your cell provider, your cell service provider, is that usually a stop in or is that a phone call, something that you can do online?
You probably can do it online. For some reason, we still call, just to chit chat and make sure there's nothing else that we need to know type of thing. But yeah, you can do that online too. And
then you also have in here sharing your itinerary, letting people you trust, friends, family know where you're going to be so that if anything comes up.
Yeah. Sharing it with your family, of course, where you're going to be and that type of thing. But then also I share just the high level information with trusted neighbors and, just suggest that perhaps if they have company, just park in our driveway, make it look like there's somebody here. And on that same line, we have timers in our house. We do have like our outside plants, we have them on timers and that type of thing. So everything, kind of looks like we're here and we're also taking care of the house type of thing.
Right. No, great points. And you have kind of on the safety note of all of these things too, or the precautions, I guess, is making sure you're always carrying your passport with you, but make a copy of it. Keep that copy somewhere else that's like away from your other. And then I think this is a neat one that you have too, is any prescriptions like your glasses or contact lens or medications. Make sure you have access to what those prescriptions are just in case something gets lost while you're there and you're in a pinch.
Right. And some people take copies of their prescriptions or, they have it on their phone. Same thing with passport. They take a picture of it so that they've got documentation. It's never been an issue for me, but it's just, again, peace of mind knowing that, you lose some important medication, you are able to get it somewhere because you've got that documentation.
And then you have starting, in that 3-month window out, start to learn these basic phrases. That's huge.
That is huge. That is so important being an international traveler because you're showing respect for the people, where you're visiting. It's just a nice thing anyway, to be greeted in your own language by somebody else. So it goes a long way and it brings smiles to people's faces and, people are very, very helpful too. It's just a little bit extra, like I care about you kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough. And then as you need more, because sometimes if you get really good at greeting someone in their language, then they respond to you in their language because they think you speak it. And you're like, oh gosh. And that's where Google Translate can come in.
Right.
And then now, as it's really close, 2 weeks to go, Lolly has reminders for us. Get your medications. Make sure that TSA is going to let you bring in all those liquids. Check your liquid levels. Couple of things that you may not think about, but schedule or prepay bills. A lot of people already have it on auto pay, but a lot of people don't. So if you don't have it already scheduled on auto pay, then maybe prepay them so that you don't have a hiccup there. And then things like stopping your mail or planning for someone to get it. Some of those things that may seem mundane, but then right as you're like on your way to your airport, which happens to us, you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask so-and-so to get the mail, So this timeline really helps us to it's a checklist for us so that we aren't in that 48 hours before our trip panicking and trying to fit all of these things in. And then towards the end, you have like finalizing those plans for your home. And if you're doing just a weekend trip or even a week long or 2 weeks trip, there's going to be less to plan. But if you are doing a bigger trip, there might be more. And some of the things Lolly said, especially engaging your neighbors when you can, but things that make it seem like people are around maybe a little bit more than they are. And then how are you going to get to the airport? Are you going to take a taxi, an Uber, or somebody bringing you? So starting to get to those really specifics. What are you going to listen to or read while you're on the plane? And I think that that's a really good one that like we're so busy planning the trip. Sometimes we forget that.
Yep. Yeah. I would download whatever you're interested in, like reading or watching something, that type of thing, because it's always good just, sitting in the airport or, on the airplane or even downtime wherever you happen to be. It can be a nice distraction. And if I might, I'd just like to get back to the postal service, your mail. You don't have to ask someone to pick up your mail. You can schedule it. There's something you can go into a post office and fill out a form, or you could do it online. And I also wanted to say something that I really do like, that a nice feature from the post office is something called informed delivery. So you create an account online with the Postal Service, and you actually can get pictures of all of your mail every single day that you're gone. So it's just, I usually just scan it just to make sure, there's nothing big there. So anyway, again, that's just a little peace of mind when we're away. And then we just schedule to have our mail dropped at our doorstep, the day that we come back. And it's worked really well.
Informed delivery is that feature.
Yeah.
We just started using that recently, and it's very valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it'll also just on your normal time, like you'll be like, my husband will look at it and he'll say, oh, such and such arrived today. Or, although I've gotten blamed for throwing things away when I haven't, because it actually didn't come that day. It came the next. And I'm like, it's something important and he saw it on the picture and now it's not out in the mail. Did I throw it away? And then the last thing you have on here, which is probably the most important, is being flexible and knowing that not everything's going to go, many things aren't going to go just as you plan. So being flexible with that and still enjoying it for what it is, for the experience that does unfold in front of us.
Yeah, it's the big picture, you're going to, expand your horizons, experience new things, new people, that type of thing. And there are going to be hiccups, there are going to be flight delays, or we were in Italy one time and we wanted to go to the Cinque Terre and there was a transit strike. We couldn't get there. So we had to, figure out something else. Incredibly frustrating when it happens, kind of maybe a little comical a little bit later, when time goes by. And we had another great, different kind of experience that day. So things do happen and you just have to realize that and go with the flow and make the best of it. And it should work out.
Well, I just noticed we have 3 minutes before 1, and being mindful that a lot of people have this 1 hour blocked off with work. I want to open it up for questions. If y'all can put it into the chat, we'll keep an eye. Know that Cam is putting in the links that we'd talked about, the links that Lolly has. Lolly's entire website is amazing. So just going through her website, learning about her, but also the different experiences that she shares about on there, and specifically the travel timeline was what caught my eye, that I thought, wow, our Dream Bold Adventure series could really benefit from this. Yes. So Shalita was saying, Lala, your travel website makes me want to travel. And I agree. It's so inspiring for us. It is something that I would tuck away again, if that travel is sooner than later. And for a lot of people, it's going to have to be later. Save this as a resource, y'all. It's such good information. One last question I wanted to ask you, Lolly, is when you are planning a trip, do you use your own timeline?
I do. So, I had told you that we had this, trip to Canada scheduled, but, it was really not top of mind for so long because the border was closed and, with the pandemic and such. And then 2 weeks ago, find out that, oh my gosh, the border is opening and the trip is on. I did pull out the timeline and just used it as kind of a little mental checklist. Okay, I got to still do this. I got to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly valuable. It's something that I'm going to hang on to as a resource for all travel moving forward. So, Lolly, thank you so much for your time with us. We've got your resources here. For those listening through podcasts, we'll have it all in our episode notes. And I appreciate everybody's time and enthusiasm with this. Thanks, Lolly.
Thanks so much. It's great being here.
I am so grateful to Lolly for joining us, for sharing her expertise, her passion for travel. As I mentioned, her website is an incredible resource. Her entire website is a fantastic resource. Her Travel with Lolly planning timeline is just brilliant. It's something that I would just say, keep it. That's just one thing that you can just kind of like refer to each time. And just as she said, it might not be something that you use literally step by step every time, but it can be kind of that good little check along the way. So that 24, 48 hours up to your trip is not just wild and harried. So let me know what you think of the travel planning timeline, but also our adventure travel series in general. I would love to hear about it. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. And if you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.